Margaret O'Sullivan had been cleaning out her late grandmother's house in Salem, Massachusetts for 3 weeks when she found the family portrait tucked behind a stack of old books in the attic. The September afternoon light streaming through the dusty window illuminated the sepia-toned photograph as she carefully lifted it from its hiding place. At first glance, it appeared to be a typical 1915 family portrait. A stern-faced father in a dark suit standing behind his seated wife, who held a baby in an elaborate christening gown. 2 young children, a boy and a girl, stood on either side of their parents. The formal pose and Victorian-era clothing were characteristic of professional family photography of the period. Margaret's grandmother had mentioned this photograph once, years ago, describing it as the picture that broke our family's heart. But whenever Margaret had asked for details, her grandmother would change the subject, her eyes growing distant and sorrowful. Now, examining the photograph more closely, Margaret began to understand her grandmother's reluctance to discuss it. While the parents and older children appeared normal for a family portrait of the era, something about the baby was deeply unsettling. The infant's eyes appeared completely black, not the natural dark brown that might appear black in old photographs, but an unnatural, void-like darkness that seemed too intense for a normal child. Margaret turned the photograph over and found an inscription in faded ink. The Whitmore family, October 1915. Little Thomas, our precious angel. Below that, in different handwriting, someone had added, born with God's mystery, loved beyond measure. The baby's name was Thomas, and according to family records Margaret had found earlier, he would have been her great-great-uncle. But she had never seen his name on any family tree or heard any stories about him. It was as if Thomas Whitmore had been completely erased from the family's history. Margaret felt a chill run down her spine as she studied the photograph again. Something about the baby's appearance suggested this family had endured a tragedy that went far beyond typical infant mortality of the era. The way the parents held themselves, the forced nature of their smiles, and most disturbing of all, those impossibly dark eyes staring directly at the camera. The next morning, Margaret drove to the Salem Historical Society, carrying the photograph carefully wrapped in acid-free tissue paper. She hoped the local historians might have records of the Whitmore family from 1915 that could explain what had happened to baby Thomas. The Society's head archivist, Dr. Patricia Henley, was a woman in her 60s who had spent her career documenting Salem's medical and social history. When Margaret showed her the photograph, Dr. Henley's reaction was immediate and professional. "This is quite remarkable," she said, reaching for her reading glasses. "I've seen similar cases documented in early 20th century medical journals. This child appears to have been born with a severe ocular condition." Margaret's pulse quickened. "You recognize this condition?" Dr. Henley nodded, studying the image with clinical interest. "The complete darkness of the eyes suggests either severe bilateral aniridia, absence of the iris, or more likely, bilateral anophthalmia combined with prosthetic eyes." In 1915, medical understanding of such conditions was extremely limited. She led Margaret to a private research room and pulled out several thick volumes of medical histories from the early 1900s. The Whitmore family was one of Salem's most prominent families, but they faced a tragedy that was both medical and social. Having a child born with such severe deformities carried enormous stigma in that era. Dr. Henley opened a folder containing medical journals from Massachusetts General Hospital, dated 1915. "Look at this case study from Dr. Harold Pierce, one of Boston's leading ophthalmologists of the time. He documented several cases of children born with complete absence of normal eye structures." Margaret studied the medical drawings and photographs with growing understanding. The documented cases showed children whose eye sockets contained either malformed tissue or crude prosthetic devices that appeared as solid black masses. "Dr. Henley, what would this condition have meant for a family in 1915? The archivist's expression grew sympathetic. "Margaret, children born with such severe deformities were often hidden away by wealthy families. The social stigma was enormous, and medical treatment was primitive at best. Many families simply couldn't cope with the public shame and the child's complex medical needs." Dr. Henley disappeared into the archives and returned with a leather-bound medical journal that belonged to Dr. Samuel Morrison, the family physician who had served Salem's prominent families in the early 1900s, Dr. Morrison was known for his detailed record-keeping and his compassionate treatment of difficult cases, she explained. His journals provide insight into how families dealt with medical tragedies during this period. Margaret opened the journal carefully, finding entries that began in September 1915, just after baby Thomas was born. Dr. Morrison's handwriting was precise and clinical, but his observations revealed deep empathy for the family's situation. September 15, 1915. Attended the birth of the Whitmore infant. Child born with complete bilateral anophthalmia, absence of eye globes entirely. The eye sockets are present but contain only rudimentary tissue. Parents are devastated, as this condition was entirely unexpected. Have recommended consultation with specialists in Boston. September 22, 1915. Returned to examine baby Thomas. The infant appears healthy in all other respects. Good reflexes, normal feeding response, proper weight gain. However, the complete absence of eyes creates a disturbing appearance that is quite shocking to family members and visitors. Mrs. Whitmore is struggling emotionally with her son's condition. October 1, 1915. Consulted with Dr. Pierce at Massachusetts General regarding prosthetic options for baby Thomas. While prosthetic eyes existed in 1915, they were crude affairs, typically glass spheres painted black or brown. For an infant with no eye socket structure, even basic prosthetics would be extremely difficult to fit properly. Margaret felt her heart breaking as she read Dr. Morrison's compassionate observations about the family's struggle. The doctor had clearly been trying to help them navigate an impossible situation with limited medical resources. October 10, 1915. Mrs. Whitmore insists on having a family portrait taken despite Thomas's condition. She believes it's important to document their family as it is, not as society expects it to be. I admire her courage, though I fear the photograph will be difficult for them to look at in years to come. October 15, 1915. Fitted. Baby Thomas with basic prosthetic devices. Simple black glass spheres that sit in the eye sockets. They provide a more normal appearance for the family portrait, though they obviously provide no vision. The child has adapted well and shows no discomfort. Dr. Henley watched Margaret's reaction carefully. The prosthetics explain the solid black appearance of Thomas's eyes in the photograph. They weren't trying to hide anything sinister. They were simply doing their best with the medical technology available. Dr. Morrison's journal entries from late October 1915 revealed the increasing social pressure the Whitmore family faced as news of Thomas's condition spread through Salem's tight-knit community. On October 20th, 1915, Mr. Whitmore visited my office today, deeply distressed about the community's reaction to baby Thomas. Several prominent families have made it clear that the child's appearance makes them uncomfortable, and invitations to social events have ceased entirely. The family is becoming increasingly isolated. October 25th, 1915. Mrs. Whitmore confided that she has stopped attending church because other congregants stare at baby Thomas with a mixture of pity and revulsion. Some well-meaning but misguided individuals have suggested that the child's condition is divine punishment for some sin. This medieval thinking persists even in our supposedly enlightened age. November 1st, 1915. The photographer, Mr. James Sullivan, initially refused to take the family portrait because he felt Thomas's appearance would be disturbing to future viewers. Only after Dr. Pierce provided a letter explaining the medical nature of the condition did Mr. Sullivan agree to proceed with the session. Margaret read these entries with growing anger at the ignorance and cruelty the family had faced. Dr. Henley pulled out additional documents that provided context for the social attitudes of 1915. You have to understand, Dr. Henley explained, that in 1915 many people still believed that birth defects were caused by moral failings or divine judgment. Scientific understanding of genetic conditions and developmental disorders was extremely limited. She showed Margaret newspaper clippings from the era discussing feeble-minded children and the prevailing belief that visible disabilities reflected inner moral corruption. The Whitmore family was fighting not just a medical condition, but centuries of superstition and social prejudice. November 10, 1915. I have been researching similar cases in medical literature to better support the Whitmore family. Found documentation of bilateral anophthalmia in children from perfectly healthy moral families. This condition appears to be a random developmental accident. not a reflection of parental character. November 15th, 1915. Mrs. Whitmore asked me directly whether Thomas will ever be able to live a normal life. I told her honestly that while he will never have vision, children with this condition can develop normally in all other respects. However, the social challenges may prove more difficult than the medical ones. November 20th, 1915. The family has made the difficult decision to send Thomas to the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston. While he is still an infant, they want to ensure he receives proper education and training for life without sight. This decision has sparked controversy among relatives who believe the child should be institutionalized instead. Dr. Henley discovered records from the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston, showing that baby Thomas had indeed been enrolled there in late 1915. This institution, founded in 1829, was pioneering in its approach to educating blind children and treating them as capable individuals rather than objects of pity. The Perkins School was revolutionary for its time, Dr. Henley explained as she opened the school's admission records. They believed that blind children could lead productive, independent lives with proper education and support. The school's records provided a completely different perspective on Thomas's condition and potential. Student file, Thomas Whitmore, admitted November 1915. Child presents with complete bilateral anophthalmia. Despite absence of vision, infant shows normal development in all other areas. Strong tactile responses, normal hearing, healthy appetite, and sleep patterns. Parents are committed to child's education and integration into society. Progress report, December 1915. Thomas has adapted well to school environment, uses touch and hearing to navigate effectively, shows particular aptitude for music and mathematics. Teaching staff impressed by child's intelligence and social adaptation. Margaret felt a surge of pride reading about her great-great-uncle's success at the school. So Thomas was thriving despite his condition? More than thriving, Dr. Henley replied. Look at these later reports from the school. Progress report, June 1916. Thomas Whitmore has exceeded all expectations. At age 1, he demonstrates problem-solving abilities that rival children with full sight. His memory is exceptional, and he has begun to show signs of musical genius. Recommend continued enrollment and advanced music instruction. Report to parents, December 1916. Your son Thomas is among our most remarkable students. His condition, while medically challenging, has not limited his intellectual or creative development. He has become a leader among the younger students and shows tremendous potential for future independence. Dr. Henley pulled out a photograph from the school's archives showing a group of students in 1918. This is Thomas at age 3, she said, pointing to a smiling boy in the front row. Even without functional eyes, his face radiated intelligence and joy. The school records revealed that Thomas had indeed lived a full and successful life, eventually becoming a renowned piano tuner and music teacher. He had married, had children, and lived until 1978, a complete life that his family had never known about because they had been told he died in infancy. Margaret, your family was lied to about Thomas's fate. He didn't die as a baby. He lived for 63 years and had a remarkable career helping other blind individuals. Dr. Henley uncovered correspondence between the Whitmore family and the Perkins School that revealed the heartbreaking truth about why Thomas had been erased from family history. It appears that the family's decision to send Thomas to the school was influenced by tremendous pressure from their social circle and extended family, she explained, opening a folder of letters dated 1915-1916. The correspondence painted a picture of a family torn apart by conflicting advice and social expectations. Letter from Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore to Perkins School, December 1915. We want what is best for our son Thomas, but our family is deeply divided about his care. My husband's relatives insist that institutionalization is the only proper solution, while I believe he deserves the chance at education and independence that your school provides. Letter from Mr. Charles Whitmore to Perkins School, January 1916. My wife and I are heartbroken by this separation from our son, but we have been convinced by family advisors that this is the kindest solution for everyone involved. We request that all future communications about Thomas be sent directly to us and not shared with extended family members. Dr. Henley discovered a particularly revealing letter from February 1916. The social pressure has become unbearable. My husband's business partners have made it clear that having a defective child could damage his reputation and financial prospects. We have been advised to tell people that Thomas died in infancy, as this will preserve the family's standing in society while allowing Thomas to receive the specialized care he needs. Margaret felt sick reading about the impossible choice her ancestors had faced. They felt forced to choose between their son and their social position. Unfortunately, yes. The stigma surrounding disability in 1915 was so severe that many families felt they had no choice but to hide affected children away. The Whitmore family tried to find a middle ground, ensuring Thomas received excellent care while protecting the rest of the family from social ostracism. The letters revealed that the parents had continued to support Thomas financially and emotionally throughout his life, visiting him regularly at school and later maintaining a relationship with him as an adult. However, they had agreed never to acknowledge him publicly as their son. Letter from Mrs. Whitmore to school, December 1920. Thomas continues to thrive, and we are so proud of his accomplishments. However, we must maintain the fiction of his death for the sake of our other children's futures. Society's cruelty toward families like ours has not diminished, and we cannot risk our daughter's marriage prospects or our son's business opportunities. Dr. Henley had managed to locate records from the Massachusetts State Archives showing Thomas's complete life story, a story his own family had been forced to hide for over a century. Thomas Whitmore lived an extraordinary life, she said, spreading out documents that chronicled his achievements. After graduating from Perkins, he became one of the most skilled piano tuners in New England. The records showed that Thomas had opened his own business in Boston in 1935, specializing in tuning pianos for concert halls and music schools. His acute hearing, developed to compensate for his lack of sight, made him exceptionally gifted at his profession. Boston Globe article, April 1940. Thomas Whitmore, despite being born without sight, has built a reputation as one of Boston's finest piano technicians. His work can be heard in concert halls throughout New England, where musicians specifically request his services for their most important performances. Margaret studied photographs of Thomas as an adult, a dignified man in his 20s and 30s, well-dressed and confident, surrounded by the pianos he maintained. His prosthetic eyes had been updated with more sophisticated models that looked remarkably natural. He married in 1942. Dr. Henley continued, showing Margaret a wedding announcement from the Boston Herald. His wife, Sarah Mitchell, was a music teacher at a school for the blind. They had 3 children together, all of whom had normal vision. The marriage records and birth certificates revealed that Thomas's children had grown up knowing their father's remarkable story. They had become teachers, musicians, and advocates for disabled individuals, carrying on his legacy of overcoming social barriers. Thomas's youngest daughter, Mary Whitmore Stevens, is still alive, Dr. Henley said quietly. She's 82 years old and lives in Cambridge. I took the liberty of contacting her when I realized you were researching the family. She's been hoping for decades that someone from the main Whitmore line would eventually seek out the truth. Margaret felt her heart racing. You mean I have a living cousin who knew Thomas personally? More than that, she has boxes of family photographs, letters, and documents that Thomas saved throughout his life. He never stopped hoping that someday his birth family would want to reconnect with him. Dr. Henley handed Margaret a recent photograph of an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Mary has been the keeper of Thomas's memory for the past 40 years. She's been waiting for this moment her entire life. 2 days later, Margaret found herself sitting in the comfortable living room of Mary Whitmore Stevens in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The walls were lined with photographs spanning nearly a century, images of Thomas throughout his life, his wife and children, and the extended family that the main Whitmore line had never known existed. My father talked about his birth family every day of his life, Mary said, her voice still strong at 82. He understood why they felt they had to let him go, but he never stopped loving them or hoping they might change their minds. Mary brought out a cedar chest filled with documents and photographs that Thomas had carefully preserved. Among them was a copy of the 1915 family portrait that had started Margaret's investigation. Daddy kept this picture on his desk his entire life, Mary explained. He said it was the only proof he had that his parents had loved him, even for a brief time. He used to tell me that his mother's hand on his shoulder in that photograph was the last time he remembered feeling completely safe and wanted. Margaret examined Thomas's collection with wonder and sadness. There were programs from his piano recitals, letters from grateful music students, photographs of him teaching young blind children, and most touching of all, drafts of letters he had written to his birth family but never sent. Draft letter dated 1945. Dear Mother and Father, I hope this letter finds you well. I graduated from Harvard's music program this year and have opened my own piano restoration business. I want you to know that the education you provided at Perkins gave me the foundation for a wonderful life. I hold no anger toward you for the choice you made. I understand the world was different then. Draft letter, dated 1960. I was married last week to a wonderful woman who loves me despite my limitations. I wish you could have been there to see how happy I am. Every day I remember your faces from that last photograph, and I pray that you found peace with the decision you made about my care. Mary wiped tears from her eyes as Margaret read the letters. He wrote dozens of these over the years but never sent them. He was afraid that contact from him would cause your side of the family pain or embarrassment. What was he like as a father? Margaret asked. Mary's face lit up. He was wonderful, patient, funny, incredibly intelligent. He taught us that having a disability didn't make you less than anyone else. It just meant you had to work harder and be more creative. He never felt sorry for himself, not once. Mary led Margaret to Thomas's study, which had been preserved exactly as he had left it when he died in 1978. The room was filled with musical instruments, braille books, and most remarkably, detailed family trees that Thomas had spent decades researching. Daddy never stopped tracking the Whitmore family, Mary explained. He knew about births, deaths, marriages, and achievements on your side of the family for over 60 years. He was so proud when your grandmother graduated from college, and he followed your father's military service during World War II. Margaret stared at the detailed charts showing her own family's history, all compiled by a man they had thought was dead. He knew about all of us. He knew everything. When your grandmother got married, when your father was born, when you graduated from high school. He even knew about your work as a genealogist. He used to say that someday someone from the family would start asking questions about the missing pieces in their history. Mary pulled out a thick folder labeled "For my birth family," if they ever come looking. Inside was a complete record of Thomas's life, along with photographs, achievements, and a final letter he had written shortly before his death. To my birth family, if you are reading this, it means someone finally wanted to know the truth about what happened to baby Thomas. I want you to know that I lived a full and happy life. The decision you made in 1915 was the right one. I received an education and opportunities that would never have been possible in Salem society at that time. I learned to read using Braille, earned degrees in music and mathematics, built a successful business, married a wonderful woman, and raised 3 children who have all become productive members of society. My condition, which seemed like such a tragedy in 1915, became the foundation for a career helping other musicians achieve perfection in their art. I hope my story brings you peace. You gave me the greatest gift possible, not sight, which was beyond your power to give, but the chance to become the person I was meant to be. I forgive any pain you may have felt about your decision, and I want you to know that it led to a beautiful life. With love and gratitude, Thomas Whitmore, 1915-1978. Margaret wept as she read Thomas's final message to a family he had never stopped loving. Mary handed her a tissue and sat beside her quietly. Margaret, there's one more thing Daddy wanted his birth family to know. He established a scholarship fund at Perkins School for children born with severe visual impairments. It's been helping families like yours for 30 years now, ensuring that no child has to be hidden away because of a medical condition. 6 months later, Margaret stood in the Salem Historical Society next to a new exhibition, titled Hidden in Plain Sight, The Thomas Whitmore Story. The display featured the 1915 family portrait, alongside photographs chronicling Thomas's remarkable life, his achievements, and his lasting contributions to the community of visually impaired individuals. Mary Whitmore Stevens stood beside her, having donated her father's entire collection to ensure his story would never be forgotten again. The exhibition had drawn visitors from across New England, including many families dealing with similar medical conditions. The most important message of this exhibition Margaret told a reporter from the Salem News. Is that what seemed like a family tragedy in 1915 was actually the beginning of an extraordinary life? My great-great-uncle Thomas didn't need to be hidden away or treated as less than human. He needed education, support, and the chance to contribute to society. Dr. Henley had worked with Margaret and Mary to create educational materials showing how far medical understanding and social attitudes had evolved since 1915. The display included information about modern treatments for anophthalmia, prosthetic advances, and most importantly, stories of contemporary individuals thriving with similar conditions. A young mother approached Margaret after the exhibition opening, carrying a baby with obvious visual impairments. Reading about Thomas gives me so much hope for my daughter's future, she said. 100 years ago, my family might have made the same heartbreaking choice as yours. Today, I know she can have a full, successful life. Margaret smiled, thinking of Thomas's final letter. That's exactly what he would have wanted to hear. The exhibition description concluded with words that Thomas himself had written. A disability is only a limitation if society decides to make it one. With proper support, education, and opportunity, any child can contribute something beautiful to the world. Margaret kept the original 1915 family portrait in her home, but now when she looked at baby Thomas's black prosthetic eyes, she saw not tragedy but potential. The photograph had become a bridge between two branches of the family that had been separated by fear and social prejudice but were now reunited by understanding and love. Thomas's scholarship fund continued to help visually impaired children, and his descendants had become advocates for disability rights. The family portrait that had once represented shame and secrecy now stood as a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of education, and the truth that every life has value. Regardless of the challenges it may face, the Whitmore family was finally complete again, their hidden history restored to its rightful place in their legacy.